Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Osei Gyamfi, who's a current recruiter for Facebook. And I want to kind of welcome into the show. Osei, how you doing today?
Doing well, brother. How you doing?
Can't complain, man. Looking forward to talking to you because you are the first recruiter. And more importantly, you're a recruiter from Facebook, which I think all of the listeners do know very well. You know, so it's going to be an interesting to hear a lot about those things. You know, things you could possibly share. You know, Facebook is like a friend to all of us. You know, so I'm looking forward to talking about that and giving the listeners some insight. But before we dive into what you do at your job and stuff like that, I really want to kind of talk a little bit more about where you're from, a little bit about your background, and where do you live now currently?
So currently I'm in Los Angeles. And like I stated before, I've been a recruiter with Facebook for about 3 years now. But I actually started my recruiting journey around 2004, not to date myself totally, but after I graduated from college, I went to University of California, Berkeley, which I'm actually visiting this weekend. Moved down to Los Angeles, started my career with Aerotech, which is actually where I met one of my associates who actually put me onto your podcast and said that it would be interesting to kind of share my story with you guys. So that's kind of my background. Went off and got my MBA from Pepperdine around 2015. And so since then been, really trying to, in many different facets, utilize like my experience and my scholastic training to kind of better myself and the folks around me. So recruiting kind of works into that because you could probably imagine it's basically a profession where you're helping people find, opportunities to better the lives of themselves and also their families. So.
Now, how did your education lead into recruiting? Like, what major did you pick?
Well, so I actually majored in poverty, which is political science. So basically my initial option was to be an attorney or a lawyer. So I had been studying for the LSAT and, getting ready for that. And then literally on the day of the LSAT, I woke up and I said, this is not something I want to do. I actually have a couple of sisters, older sisters who are attorneys. And even they were kind of confused as to why I would want to do it. Just because, they told me about the long, hard road that they took. So after I decided that that's not what I want to do, I was a little bit of in limbo. And I'm not sure if you ever heard of the term accidental salesperson. Well, I was an accidental recruiter, which is what most recruiters are. I moved down to Los Angeles, trying to basically find myself and what it is that I wanted to do. Initially, it was real estate. But obviously, in order to feed myself, I had to try to find work. And that year was just after the crash of 2001. And so I was out there looking for opportunities in different places. And I had stumbled into a staffing company looking to pretty much do anything, right? I was just trying to get some money until I figured out what I was going to do. And the director of business operations had asked me flat out. He was like, "I'm looking at your resume. I look at your scholastic background. Do you want to work here?" And I never even thought about that. And so, he gave me some information, told me to look it over the weekend. If I was interested, to let him know. And I kind of took to it like a duck to water. And so, I've been doing that ever since.
Okay. So one thing kind of led to the next thing, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those little jobs that you were like you said, you were just looking to get some money, obtain it. And then it just led to, then you actually realized you actually had a talent or a gift for it. Now, in that time frame of you just briefly talking about that, you mentioned about your older sisters. Could you tell me a little bit more about the family, sibling-wise? You say you got two older sisters?
So I actually have three older sisters.
Three older sisters. So are you the youngest?
Yeah, I'm the youngest. I'm the baby.
Man.
The oldest, yeah, I know. Trust me. The oldest is 13 years older than me. The second is 11. The third is 5 years older. And I was the baby brother that was tasked with carrying all the luggage. I was taller. So I
must got some, you got some triceps and biceps, I'm assuming.
Right, exactly.
That's cool. Can you tell? What about your parents? Where they from? Where they?
So both my parents are from Ghana. My dad actually moved to the States in the mid '60s. As funny as it is to get his PhD at Berkeley, And from there, it was in civil engineering. From there, he moved on to work for the World Bank and their civil engineering programs division. Over the years, basically kind of moved up the ranks. And so all of us were born in the States.
Okay.
I was born and grew up in the DC area. My mom and him went to high school together, so they kind of moved out together. And unfortunately, around when I was 12, she ended up passing away. But
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, so right now the family consists of my pops, my stepmom, my three older sisters, myself, and yes, that's pretty much the immediate family.
Now, you said your father coming over from Ghana.
Yeah.
Now, you said in the 60s. Like, how was that, moving from Ghana, coming into a place, the 60s, we already know that was a very rough time for any African American at that point in time. Like, how did your father deal with that time period?
It's funny we bring this up because we talked to him about that, and also the Ghanaian Revolution. As you know, Ghana was the first African nation to get its independence in Africa.
Yep.
And we talked about both. Actually, a couple of years ago, I had the luxury of being able to, before COVID-19 went crazy, be able to visit him over in Ghana. And for him, it was actually kind of weird because you have to think of it this way: he is studying at Ghana Tech before that, right? In a place where they just kind of got rid of the English colonialist government, right? We were starting to do their own rebuilding, and so there was a lot of pride around being Ghanaian and being able to have their own government and so on and so forth. And then you kind of juxtapose that with him coming to the States, and now granted it's California, but you're in a country where in some places people can't eat in the same restaurant, right?
That is correct. That's correct.
So it's so for him, it was a little bit of a culture shock because even though he had grown up in colonialism, because of the population difference, it wasn't the same kind of oppression, if that makes sense, right? It was more kind of like for instance, my name is Osei Gyamfi. My father's name is Peter, right? Because he wouldn't be able to go to a primary school if he had a name that basically the teachers, who are normally English, wouldn't be able to pronounce. So they kind of, force you into this bucket. So it's a different kind of, I guess, imperialism or, for lack of a better term, oppression. So when he came to America, he was like, this is some new stuff where it's just kind of like flat out, hey, you look like this. It's not about even like, oh, you're from this nationality or, we kind of took over your area. It's more like you look like this and you're in the minority. So,
Yeah. Now, what about the language barrier? Did he have any language barriers during that time?
Oh, not at all. Because Ghana was colonized by the English, so he came out the gate speaking like the Queen's English, right? Like if the only language barrier would be him trying to understand like the local colloquial slang. That's pretty much it. But my pops, when all is said and done, he's been able to speak like 5 languages fluently.
Oh, wow. Now, your pops, obviously, just tip my hat off to this young man. He seemed like he obviously is multi-talented. Do you feel like you've kind of, obtained some of those skills or characteristics from your father that applies to your life currently right now?
Yeah, I would say so. The thing with me and my father have very similar personality traits in that we're both high extroverts. And my dad is the type that is also really patient. I'll give you an example. Growing up in North Virginia, around the DC area, of course, I'm going to school with a lot of kids that, my father doesn't understand what the heck they're. Things like simple things like American football. My dad had to teach himself what the rules were and actually got into it. But he never thought of in his wildest dreams having a son that would want to play that. So even that, he was like, yeah, I don't know if I want you to do that. Basketball, he doesn't know how to dribble. But I played high school basketball. But even like little things like I can tell you a story when I watched when I was a kid, I was watching Back to the Future. And as we all know,
that's the classic right there.
The classic. And Marty McFly made that skateboard look super amazing, right? Like he's going around town, grabbing on the back of cars, like he's just the coolest guy in the and so here I am, this dumb little African kid, and I'm like, I want to skateboard. So I tell my father, who doesn't understand this, because again, he's an engineer, right? So he's like, you want me to buy you a piece of wood that has 4 wheels on it?
That's right.
And no braking system. Okay. Right? Like, so
that's a reality check right there. Look,
right. So
let's get a book and let's not get the skateboard.
No. Here's the thing. my father was like, look, I'm not going to take this away from this kid, right? Because I came here to America and I chose to raise him here. Therefore, he's got to do the stupid things American kids do, and he'll learn on his own. So he buys me the skateboard. And I had the skateboard like humming this theme song in my head. I go to the toppest of the hills, okay, with his skateboard. Stop. Now, granted, I have a helmet. I don't have elbow pads. Very important part of the story. I start going down this hill at what in my prepubescent brain has to be at least 55 miles an hour. Okay.
Jeez. And you looking for something to happen.
100%. So the skateboard starts wobbling. It throws me off. I get nicked up, scarred up, all this stuff. To this day, I have the scar from this. I go in complete shock. My mom is looking at me like, what the heck is wrong with you? Mind you, this is like the third time I got on the skateboard. They patch me up. I look at my skateboard and I'm like, oh, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. So I basically never rode the thing again. I think maybe a couple of other times only down the driveway. And then that was it. But
your father tried to tell you in advance, like, look, son, I think you need to go do something else, like recruiting.
Right. But here's the thing. My pops was like, I'm raising you in America. So this is what American kids do.
When in Rome, do what the Romans do.
Even though it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, I'm going to get you this stupid skateboard. And he did it. And I was like, and honestly, like lessons like that are the stuff where my dad would say something and I'd be like, you know what, maybe this guy is right. To a point where after I graduated from Cal, 2003, we went back to go see him in Ghana. Right. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, so you should go to business school. And I was like, you know what? I think I should get my life together at some point and go to business school. It took me about 5 years to actually go through the motions and get it done. But I was like, at that point, I was like, look, my pops, as far as I'm concerned, is somewhat sage, just because, the numerous things, the football thing. I was like, Dad, the coaches want me to play football. Why? I went to a mainly white high school and they saw a black kid. Sorry for your viewers who might not understand how that works, but that's a thing that happens to us.
They're like, you got to be an athlete, right?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like you have black skin, so run. And my dad was like, okay, take a look at this, and he showed me a Redskins game. Right? Sorry, now I was watching a football team, and it's Ernest Biner as the running back, and he's getting blasted every 5 seconds, and they're like, good run, and he's like, you see that? You run, you get blasted. And then they tell you, good job. Does that sound smart to you? And I was like, no. He's like, yeah, so you want me to buy pads? He's like, I'll do it. But just understand. I was like, nope, I'm good. That year, the running back, who was African-American, of course, because that's how it's done, broke his femur. And I was like, oh, my dad is wise. So ever since then.
Your father he's like the Yoda of the game. He was just trying to school you to the game before it even happened.
100%. Like even when I was trying to get into Cal, I was taking my SATs, and again, they don't have SATs in Ghana. Like they're like, what the heck is that? They have like boards or whatever they call it. Yep. And so he's like, yeah, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm doing the verbal section, just practicing. Right now, mind you, most kids in high school, they're off partying, drinking, and trying to get all these girls. I'm literally studying, just trying to get like my education going. And he's like, yeah, don't do the verbal section. What the hell? Are you trying to be a writer? And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I want you to be an engineer. So you're gonna do the math all the time. To the point where I got 92nd percentile in math on my SATs.
Wow.
Which is basically what got me in college. So even the stuff that seems like it might be stupid, it works out.
Your father seems to go through the backdoor approach. That's what I like about the young man. And now you have obviously have kind of moved into that yourself now, like by taking an approach, like obviously you went to school for business, but then you found a way to migrate your way into like recruiting. Like, tell me a little bit about like some of the obstacles you face, like being a first generation recruiter at your company. Facebook is pretty big. Like, is there a lot of recruiters of color that work with you?
Believe it or not, there are. So Facebook actually does a pretty good job of trying to make sure that their workforce is pretty diverse. And they actually, when it comes to DEI and, inclusiveness, they really do focus on that. In fact, one of the things that we talk about pretty often in our reviews and the like is, of the hires that we're getting, like how many are diverse, because they want the last thing. And it's a two-way street, right? Obviously, Facebook is a product that affects everyone, and so they want everyone's input, if that makes any sense, right? So that's kind of one of the reasons why they do it, because from a monetary standpoint, they don't want something that's just going to appeal to one piece of the demographic, right? Like Facebook's whole thing is they want everyone to have all their stuff, right? Like that's their thing. And then secondly is also diversity of thought. So they want to be able to have people with different backgrounds to be able to talk about like some of the things that, you know, that their demographics are talking about or interested in, et cetera. And so in order to ensure that they're getting a diverse workforce, they want to have a diverse recruiting class. And so they actually do a pretty good job of making sure that their recruiting teams are diverse. Like if you walked into a Facebook office, you would be like, okay, yeah, this is honestly, I was very shocked. It's a very diverse group of people who are all working to do this, you know, on the same products to make sure that everything's going to work smoothly. Yeah.
Is everyone at the same level? Do you feel like there's, you know, is a separation and change?
There's a separation. So the higher you go up, the clearer things get. And that's public knowledge. It's public knowledge. Everyone kind of knows that. And that's something that they're currently working on. Because a lot of the folks that are, you know, closer to the top are legacy people, right? And so they're the ones that came in when it wasn't a publicly traded company, you know, at the beginning when, you know, kind of chips fell where they fell, but they're looking to kind of expand the company and to be able to change that. So right now, Facebook's getting more into like the AR, VR side of the house. So a lot of that leadership is looking very diverse. And, you know, they're also looking at other positions, you know, at the top where they can kind of add to the C-suites, et cetera, to make sure that they get that done. Because, you know, just like any company that might have started up, you know, obviously you have your ragtag group, you know, maybe the first, I would say 500 to 1,000, especially a company like that, they might not have had that kind of a focus back in, say, like the mid 2000s. But as they get bigger, they realize that that's important. So now they're starting to kind of change that. And of course, you know, any kind of aggressive change like that takes time, but there is effort being put there.
Now, how do you fit into that equation? How do you help to grow that population at Facebook? Is there any type of special organizations or groups that are inside of the Facebook, your department that it works on inclusion and promote diversity?
Yes. So we actually have diversity program managers and an entire diversity staff and team. Maxine Williams is actually at the head of that, and she does a really good job in terms of being able to educate the internal employees and especially the recruiting teams on not just in terms of like, oh, you should be inclusive because, you know, we just want to look that way, but also the reasoning. One of the stories she talks about, I think it was Dove, who at one point in time, you know, was pretty much, and I know this is going to sound relatively terrible, but, you know, it is what it is. They were stagnant in sales. And what they found out was that a lot of African-American female, that demographic wasn't buying their stuff. And they were like, well, why isn't that? And they came to find out that a lot of their products actually were detrimental to African-American skin, right? Because, you know, the way we produce oil is different. The way we take in light and melanin, you know, all that stuff is it's not the same. I mean, so it's the pretty much the primary difference between the demographics. And so the story she tells is how Dove basically went back to the lab and said, how do we, you know, bring in people who can explain to us what does work, right? And what we can do in order to, you know, have our products be more universal, because just like any other company, they want everybody using it. And so they literally came up with a whole product line aimed and directed at that demographic to be able to, you know, basically be more inclusive. And when it comes to places like Facebook, that's really what they're looking to do, and what their goal is, you know, not to be like, hey, let's just look as if we're being more inclusive, but, you know, as a company, if you want to be able to grow and actually bring value to all, you have to be able to include all in the planning.
That is correct.
Yeah,
And
you know,
diversity is a very big thing in regards to like getting to understand things. You know, gives you a new perspective on certain things, you know, when you involve other people in their opinions and stuff. Now, you've been working with Facebook. Remind me again, for how long?
About 3 years.
About 3 years. From the time you've entered into Facebook to where you are right now, like, how do you feel about, you know, empowering the Black voices in that community? Do you feel like they have been it growing, or is it growing rapidly? Do you feel like more of because like you said, at one point in this conversation, you said that as the individuals move further up the ladder, it's a little bit different. At the lower level, you could see more of that diversity and stuff. But do you feel like there are more African Americans or people of color inclining up that ladder to those leadership positions?
Oh yeah, for sure. And for the primary reason is especially the AR VR side of the house. That's really all I can really speak upon, because that's kind of what I recruit for. That's Oculus, that's Portal. That would be like Facebook Stories, the new AR VR glasses, and a couple things that they're making now I can't talk about. But because they're kind of starting from the ground up, they're starting to hire from like that perspective. So you have a lot of people who are, so basically the company is expanding, but as it's expanding, they're growing on that side of the house as if it is, like a new business or a new company. So they're doing a really good job when it comes to that piece of it. And so, for me, I don't have an issue recruiting for Facebook, because I understand what their mission is. I know what they're trying to do. And I'm a part of that, right? So like I get to be that person who is looking for these folks in these positions that can really impact things differently. And so because the recruiting team is very diverse and is conscious of that, like it gives us the opportunity to talk to our hiring managers directly and let them know, like, and work with them and say, hey, we should get you a diverse team. And in doing that, these are some of the people that I see that are out there who I think should be given a shot and a chance, and they're open to listening to us.
Okay. Now, if you could kind of help us out, and I know a lot of listeners are listening, for example, some of our younger viewers, could you explain a little bit more about the AR VR?
Yeah. So basically AR VR is a segment that is kind of growing right now. VR has been around for about, I can't even tell you the exact number of years, but it's got to be at least 20, probably 20 to 30. But it's never really been perfected in a way that was palatable for the day-to-day consumer at home. A lot of times you needed a PC, and basically what it is these interactive experiences where you can put on a headset, and it's basically it almost feels like you're being teleported someplace else. You're able to play either games, watch videos or movies with other people, but they show up as avatars. You're able to have conversations. You're able to, create different rooms, and it's actually really cool and kind of interesting the way that it's able, like you're able to kind of interact with others. So I'll give you an example. There's a game that they have called Arizona Sunshine, which is kind of like a zombie shooter. But when you are in the game, you're the one aiming the swinging the bat, aiming the pistol, or like, if you're in something where you're playing like volleyball or some kind of a game with your friends within the system, your hand is actually the thing that's hitting the ball, right? Like it's not like press A, press B, or, triangle or square. You're the one doing it. And so it gives you a much cooler experience because you feel like it's you. They have a game on there in conjunction with The Walking Dead. It's a Walking Dead VR title, which to me is like the best VR title I've ever played in my life. The story's compelling. It's really interesting. You feel like you're in it. So like when a zombie's running up on you, it feels like it's running up on you. And like if you want to push them off, you have to push them off. Like it's not like, oh, press this button.
You see your own arms pushing.
You see your own hands pushing them off. Like your fingers, you can make a fist, you can open your hand, you see all of it. And so like it's you. And that aspect is something that they wanted to be able to kind of target and capture, because Xbox, Microsoft already has the Xbox, Sony already has the PlayStation. Why make another console that plays the same game, right? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. True. They wanted to be able to do something that is completely different and has a different feel, different games, and the like.
And it's funny that you talk about that. I've seen it now, and there's a lot of like locations now within the area of where I'm at in New York, where there are those AR VR kind of like spots where people could actually come in and just play games. And it's funny how you could see. I remember growing up, you used to go to an arcade place and see like several different game consoles all around, the big arcade machines. And then now it's literally someone with a pair of goggles on and, and this empty space. It's like an empty building if that was the case. But for some reason, everyone keeps coming back because of the experience. obviously when you think about those things, you talk about the talent that actually is put in to make those things actually come to play, right? The amount of effort, talent, and the creativity that these individuals are putting in to actually develop those types of programs and softwares in order to keep enhancing the gaming industry. Could you talk to us a little bit more about like the talent retention, over at Facebook, and these companies, what are they doing to kind of keep, these hiring these minorities, as we go through this process of this recruiting people?
A lot of it has to do with basically involvement and also giving folks a voice. That's one thing that Facebook does a really good job of is they want everyone's input to be heard and a lot of times even implemented. I kind of give this example when I talk to people that I'm recruiting. If you were an alien right now and you came down to Earth and someone was like, you should open up a Facebook, you would open it up and there'd be so many buttons and so many things that you could do, right? This is just a regular Facebook feed. We're not talking about AR, VR. But this speaks to the culture of the company. You can send money. There's Messenger. There are games. There's a news feed. There are groups. There are events. Like it's its own thing. You'd be like, I'm overwhelmed, right? But a lot of that stuff came about from input from employees. And so again, going back to kind of, the way that, diversity, to me, in my opinion, really needs to start is when you have a diverse recruiting team that leads into a diverse workforce, which then leads into diverse train of thought, which then leads into diversity in offering and also in presentation. And I think that because we've done such a good job of trying to keep things as diverse as humanly possible, we're able to, and we're giving people a voice. They feel like it's a place that they know that they are being heard, if that makes sense. So a lot of times, and like anyone will tell you, when people leave a job, they're not leaving because of money. Most of the time, now I'm not saying all the time, but like I would, a good portion of the time, is because they don't feel valued. Right, the company doesn't value them. The immediate boss doesn't value. Usually, it's something that has to do with that. Right, like they don't feel that their work product is valuable. Right, like it's something about how they feel about what they do or how they're being treated on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to I want more money. Now, sometimes some people are underpaid and they find out they're underpaid and then they want to leave. But for the majority of the time, it's not that. That's kind of like the secondary reason. And our retention at Facebook is actually, pretty surprisingly good for that reason. I'll give you an example. I've started with the company about 3 years ago, and Facebook does this thing where they tell you like what percentage of the company came on after you. And at this point, I think I'm at 58%. So about 42% of the current company came on board after I came on board 3 years ago. And so the numbers continue to grow.
Yeah, they're increasing.
They're increasing, and our turnover is incredibly low. And primarily it's because, basically how Facebook treats their employees and the amount of input they're given or they're able to give.
Okay. That's a good way of breaking it down for us. Now, reading your bio, I kind of got to go back to that. Reading your bio, I saw that, the word entrepreneur has pulled up, right? You obviously, as an entrepreneur, you are juggling several different things. Could you talk a little bit more about some of the endeavors that you have gone through and some of the goods and the bads of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So, and this is kind of aside, obviously, from the Facebook thing, so your listeners will understand like why the hard switch. But one of the things that I did while I was going to business school, my focus was actually entrepreneurship, and the reason being is because I didn't want to just learn about marketing. I didn't want to just learn about finance. Like I wanted to learn what it was like to be able to start, operate, and flourish a business, right? Because it just within my own kind of family construct, my mother's brother, so my uncle, started a company called Hawknet Industries, which was basically the parent company of African Pride. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but basically it's like a skincare and hair care product company that was doing a lot of sales in like some in the US, UK, but a lot in Ghana, and some of the African nations. And then my grandma on that side also was an entrepreneur as well. So I just kind of had it in my blood, I guess you could say. And so I wanted to learn more about that. Like, how do you go about starting a business, running a business, et cetera. And so with that focus, I was able to, I had a company called Chillhound, which was basically an event, like invite company, much like a Evite and so on and so forth. But the difference is when you invited people, let's say it's like a party boat or something that requires you to pay some money up front for the people who are going. People could say that they were going, and they could also basically pay you at the same time. And so you knew basically who was in and how much money you were collecting, so that you could actually have the event go on. Sounds like a very simple idea, but that really hadn't been around at the time, when we were creating this. And so I was able to pitch to raise money, right? Which I raised probably I did a friends and family raise. I've raised about $100K of private equity.
Wow.
I won
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I won a best presentation award with Tech Coast Angels for a 60-second pitch competition out of like 150 companies. I've been on KTLA at one point in time, kind of, with Money Smart, talking about the product. I was on Business Rockstars doing an interview. So it's one of those things where it was a great experience to be able to, kind of go out there and see what it's like to do all those things. Not a lot of people get a chance to say, I had this idea and I actually tried to do it, right? And I got a little bit of traction. I had users, unique users who weren't my buddies, right? People who actually wanted to use it. So that was kind of a cool thing there. I'm actually looking to kind of expand on that idea and rebrand and change the company within the next year or so to something else where we work directly with the businesses. So instead of having the individuals be the ones to do it, we actually promote business deals and allow people to pay for them as a group. So it's kind of like almost like Groupon, but instead of one person paying for the group and then everyone paying them back, everyone can pay for it at the same time. More details than that, I want to give away all the sauce on it, but that's something that I'm looking to do as well. Because obviously I'm at Facebook, I'm happy there, but as I get older, I want to be able to at least have something that can, at the very least, some passive income, something to just have out there, and people can use it, work with different businesses and see where that kind of goes. For me, I think that everybody who should be able to get into some way of getting passive income, whether it's real estate, whether it's a business, whether it's a service,
True.
Whatever that might
is
be.
True.
Like have something so that if there was ever a time when let's say like all of a sudden Facebook stock goes to zero for some odd reason, and I don't have a job anymore, I don't want to just kind of sit there blinking and hope that
you have to.
Right? Yeah,
I think that's something that this pandemic has taught us,
mm-hmm.
or taught. It's kind of like reassured people, like, look, honestly, like, I know you have this going on, but you should be working on plan B. I remember back in the days, plan A was the only option.
Yeah.
But, we know as entrepreneurs, plan A, B, and C, and D are always going to be an option. Now,
and it's funny you say that, because even and going back to speaking of my pops, my dad was a very plan A guy, right? Like he had an amazing job with in DC, and he was able to put all his kids through private school. He was able to help his kids get through college. He had a good house, food on the table, clothes on everyone's back. And my mom didn't have to work. She did just because she wanted to, but she didn't have to. And so for him, he was like, plan A is everything. Whereas, and of course, then we're not really taught at a young age, by the way, plan A, but also have a plan B. I didn't learn that lesson, right? Like on some rich dad, poor dad stuff until literally I got to business school, which is the reason why I wanted to go to the entrepreneurship track. Because they were like, look, whatever it is that you're doing, you need to know how to do your own thing just in case.
You got to know how to pivot as well, too, during those times, because as an entrepreneur, you never know what's going to come your way. So I know you have those good days. You're going to obviously have those bad days. But if you know how to pivot and change with the times, that obviously does help.
Right.
With all the knowledge that you possess, with from Facebook to obviously businesses and various different endeavors that you're working on, do you ever have the time to kind of go back to Ghana and kind of help out the younger generation, giving back in any way to the community over there?
So the last time I went back was 2019, and we were able to do some of that. Like, so for instance, my dad, he's big on it. So we really work with him on all that kind of stuff. So he does stuff where like in the neighbor, some of the neighbors or the neighboring areas and so on and so forth, they're good students because he was there before. He'll do things like, help help pay for a semester of school or something like that, which, of course, over there is like $500, right? So it doesn't really, a little can really go a long way. Those are some of the endeavors that we try to be able to help out and engage in. Just because it's one of those things where it's like, it's possible for us to do, so we just do it. And for us, education is kind of like the key. My family, as a lot of, it is what it is. A lot of second generation Africans will tell you, in America, we're kind of education snobs, right? We got the whole, like, you have to be an engineer, lawyer, or doctor. We got all that stuff, like B is bad, C is could be better, right? A is all right? Like we all had that thing. So, for us, the main arm is to be able to deal with education. Another thing is, my mom has a house out there where after she passes, she left it to us. And what we're looking to do with that is turn that into a place where young women in the area that have kind of gone through some things can go and actually get schooling. A place where they can kind of stay and get their stuff kind of put together and get back out there. So we're looking at kind of transforming that home into that now. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, especially right now in Ghana, just because there's a lot of investment capital that's going in there, and there's a lot of interest, as they had their come back home campaign, and they're trying they're giving citizenship to African Americans who want it. It's not even a thing, right? Like, you don't need a parent born there or anything like that. They're just like, hey, if you want to be a citizen. Michael J. White went back there and basically, like, they were like, welcome home, brother, right? like they did a whole thing for him. So it's right now is a really good time because they're inviting that type of growth.
There's a lot of growth going on over there. And that is a blessing within itself, because think about it, years ago, people would probably like look past it, but now it's a place where people are starting to say, well, look, you know what, I might want to, buy a property out here or buy some land and potentially build on it. So that definitely helps out the community over there. And it's a blessing to have someone like yourself who's coming from that first generation to go back there and give that information. Do you feel like that gives you like that helps you maintain a positive mindset? With all the hectic stuff got going on, whether it be personally or whether it be professionally, like, what else do you do to help maintain that positive mindset?
Well, it's gonna sound, I mean, it's all corny, right? But usually the stuff that makes you positive is kind of corny. It's not where you are, it's where you're going. And so for me, I'll give you a quick story. I was at like a neighborhood bar recently, and this gentleman asked me, I was just on my computer working, right? Like just doing testing on this product that I'm trying to make. And this guy asked me, he's like, hey, can I ask you a question? And I was like, yeah, sure. He goes, what's the thing that like is like the biggest issue for you right now, right? Like, what's on your mind? What's top of mind for you? And I tell him, I was like, you know what? The biggest issue in my entire life right now is I'm trying to juggle, working a day job while at the same time, as a Black entrepreneur, CEO of a startup company, which basically, a lot of times be like, ooh, CEO of a startup company. It's like, yeah, but unless you're doing millions of dollars in revenue, it doesn't mean anything, right? Like, you're CEO of like a piece of paper. And I was like, the biggest thing is when I get this product done after investing, my own personal capital into it and, raising capital and all this other kind of stuff, are people going to take to it, right? Is it going to be big enough where I can get it sold? Because ultimately what I'd like to do is I'd like to create a angel/accelerator firm that basically works with female and minority-owned business owners. Because as being somebody who had to go do the circuit and raise capital, it is intimidating to walk into a room and the vast majority of the people who are in there are old Caucasian males with silver hair who don't get you. And when you give your 10-minute pitch, it's like Shark Tank. They're like, don't like it, next. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no thought behind it. They don't ask more questions. They don't want to meet with you. There's not like a conversation around how do we make it work. It's more like, why won't it work, right? And so I tell him, I'm like, and what I'm afraid of is that I can't accomplish that initial mission of getting my business cranking, going, making money, getting sold, so that I can take that capital and start to invest in other people. In which case, all this effort is for nothing. And then just another part of the story, I turned and I said, what's top of mind for you? He was like, I just found out I have stage 4. I've got 5 years. I want to know what makes people tick. so it's one of those things where even that particular instance really told me, I was like, look, here's somebody who wishes he had a lot of time. I don't, time time runs out, right? Time and land, you can't make more of it. And so in that vein, it's one of those things that what keeps me positive is actually, kind of is the opportunity, the fact that I have an opportunity, right? I don't have to lose. I have a product. I have a way to make it happen. The question is, what do I have to do? How do I do it? And
when do you do it? You know what I'm saying? Like, you just pull that trigger and it's making things happen.
Right.
As we kind of wind down on this interview, I want to kind of ask this. This is a very big question for me right here to kind of know is that, being at, Facebook, a very popular company in which a lot of people want to work at, like, how do you deal with, like, how do you feel like the minority population deals with the growth of that company as a whole, like Facebook as a whole? Like,
the internal population?
Yes.
How do they deal with the growth? I mean, pretty well. Like, I don't, there's not, there's no uphill battle there.
So the people the main reason I ask that question is because, a lot of the times, minorities or immigrants, in a sense, they get discouraged, by being a part of these larger companies. When they look to their in the beginning phases, they look to left and the right and they see people of their color, or people or individuals that might be from the areas that they're from, or their family members might be from. But then as they move up the ladder, it starts to kind of depreciate. So, like, how do you feel about that?
Going back to what I was saying earlier, I feel like the company had that issue, but they're addressing it. So you don't have that much of it, right? So, for instance, I get called all the time. I've actually had a buddy call me from Amazon, like, please come over here. And honestly, I was like, no, right? Like, it was a title increase and all kinds of stuff. I was like, no, I don't feel like working for Jeff Bezos, right? Like, because that culture does not give it. They don't care. Does that make sense? Like, so, like, Facebook's a little bit of a different monster than, say, like, I can't speak on Google. I know people work at Amazon and they're like, yeah. Sorry, anyone who works at Amazon, I don't, but you're a competitor. Take it. Like Microsoft, I don't know too much about, but like within Facebook itself, you don't have, at least in the folks that I've talked to, I know there's not a lot of grumbling there, because we're all in it, right? Like, again, like, it's one of those things where, as they start to move up, they're starting to see, like, in some of these companies that are newer, or like these business units that are newer, that it is inclusive from top to bottom. And so we're not seeing a lot of that issue right now, until you get to, of course, like, like anything else, like this, the C-suite area, where you have people who've been there since quite literally like 2004, right? And then that's one of those things where they're starting to work on expanding that and so on and so forth. So, but for the majority, don't really get to a chance to see too much of that. But, like, I mean, it's public knowledge. You can be like, okay, so what's the C-suite of Facebook right now? It's like, all right, Sheryl Sandberg, right? Boz, right? Like, what I'm saying? Like, you start going down, like, who these people are, right? Like,
that's good. Yeah, that's good. You could see stuff like that. You could actually pinpoint your next step.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can look at it and be like, oh, look. You know what I'm saying?
My last question to kind of finish off, and I want to say you did a phenomenal job in sharing a lot of information about your family, your past life, your experience, your work ethic, what separated you from the pack, when you obviously went into college, and, your first job, and how you climbed up the ladder and became a recruiter. There's a lot of great things that the listeners could pull away from. I think the last thing I want to kind of ask you is that what is any suggestion that you would give to somebody listening to this episode right now? What would you like to tell them?
What I would suggest is, and I don't know how what their goals are, where they're looking to go in. One of the things that I've always said I wanted to do was let people know, especially like kids, teens, people who are going to college, people who are currently in college. There are professions out there that people stumble upon where they can do, like, really amazingly well. And I feel like that's not totally communicated until quite literally they hit the real world and they stumble upon the stuff. So one of the things I would tell my listeners is, if you know anyone who's in high school, in college, or even people who I don't care. Even if you're, I don't care what age you are. Actually, look at recruiting. Look into recruiting. Look into that type of profession. I tell people all the time, it's like real estate without the houses. If you are a kind of like a private recruiter and you do executive recruiting, for instance, you're a broker, right? So you find someone who is looking for, let's say, a director of software, and they say, we're really looking for one. You go out there and you hustle, you work hard, you invest in trying to find someone who fits what they need, and they hire them, and you have a deal with them for 20%. That is a $200K person that now you're getting paid $40,000 for.
Yeah. No, I said one of my friends is a recruiter, and she worked for a lot of big companies, like recruiting for some people. Mm-hmm. She made a significant amount of money doing that, which helped her move to LA, and now she's an actress. To be honest with you, like, so she just cashed in.
It's real estate, but it's not houses, it's people. Right?
Yeah. And companies would pay big money for the right person to be there.
Absolutely. When I was back in my first job, probably 4 years in, at this point, I was a manager, right? So I had my own office. I had recruiters working under me, and I brought my nephew. At the time, he must have been like 10, 11 years old. I brought him to my office, right? Almost like bring your nephew to school, nephew to work there, right? Mm-hmm. And he sees me, I'm sitting there in my suit and my desk, and I'm on the phone with managers, and I'm writing stuff on the board, and he just kind of sees his uncle doing this stuff. And it's funny because a bunch of him and me, a bunch of my friends were just in the room, kind of wrapping the day up, and he goes, "Uncle, when I grow up, I want to do what you do." And we all started laughing because we're like, "You're the only 11-year-old child
that wants to be a recruiter."
When I want to grow up, I want to do recruiting, right? But here's the thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, look, you inspired him, and hopefully that one day that will happen. And obviously, you have inspired our listeners as well to today by sharing, this information. I greatly appreciate you, Osei, for just taking the time out of your busy schedule and sharing with us about, again, your journey and what's been going on. We wish you the best with all your endeavors. Obviously, with your being an entrepreneur, and obviously at Facebook as well, because all of our listeners most likely have a Facebook account as well, too.
Right. Exactly.
So I just want to kind of just finish off, if for the listeners, if you want to hear more stories like Osei, check us out on ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts.